you know, there has never been a better time than today to be alive. And let me tell you why. In the next 10 years, fundamentally how humanity is going to live is going to be fundamentally changed. It's because of the people in this room, we're going to go out and understand not just what's happening outside our body, but understand our body from inside out. Exponential technologies, for the first time, is allowing the physical body to actually be looked at as a digital body. What if we can understand every single molecule inside our body, the biochemical things that are happening inside our body, and as opposed to doing the trial and error and trying to understand why certain things work or why certain things don't work, what if it could be simply the math and chemistry? Now, amazing thing is, there is nothing that's impossible that we can't achieve. The only thing we can't achieve in life is the one we believe we can't. The only thing that are difficult for us to do is the things that we believe are difficult to do. So I made it my mission to go out and solve a problem that I thought was so audacious that when people heard about it, they thought it was an absolutely a crazy idea. And that is really the theme of this talk, is that when you do something and you tell people what you're about to be doing, and if they don't think it's a crazy idea, you're not thinking big enough, right? Unless you happen to be crazy, in that case, all bets are off. Now, as an entrepreneur, it's never about having the right answers. It is about asking the right questions. And that's where we tend to generally fail. So how many of in this room that believe are experts in the field they are in? Raise your hand. Well, these are the people who are unlikely to go out and change the industry. Right. Once you become an expert at something, the best you can do is to be an incrementalist. That means you can improve it 10% or 15%, but you can never change it 10 times or 100 times. To do that, you have to challenge the foundation of everything that people have taken it for granted. And to challenge the foundation, you have to be not looking outside the box. You have to be thinking in a completely different box, right? To solve a problem, how many of you think you are absolutely passionate about doing what you're doing? Come on. Right. Those are the bunch of losers. The losers, I'm sorry, give me a chance. The passion is for losers, and the reason is the winners have obsession, right? The passion is like, my passion is to collect stamps. My passion is to collect the rocks from the space, right? But my obsession is to solve the problem of chronic diseases. How to make the chronic diseases is simply a matter of choice, not a matter of bad luck, right? We can't eliminate chronic diseases, but we know we can make it optional, and here's why. What if you know exactly what's good for you and why? What if you know exactly what's bad for you and why, and you still make a choice to do that? That choice is yours. We can't fix your choice, but we can make it optional so that you know what to do with it. So I started on this journey about 3 years ago. And when I was finishing up my other project, which is literally about going to the moon, so I started a company called Moon Express with the mission of going to the moon. And people ask me, why go to the moon when there are so many problems on Earth? And my answer is, well, when given a choice, you take both, right? You go to the moon, and you still solve the problem on Earth. You don't have to take an option, and smart people take both, right? So we say, yes, we need to go to the moon for a very simple reason. We need to save the humanity from potential extinction. All of us, 9 billion of us, live on a single spacecraft. And imagine if our spacecraft gets damaged. All of us will die. Remember the dinosaurs? They were substantially larger creatures. And an asteroid hit them. They hit the planet, and all the dinosaur species died. And if you can hear any dinosaur rolling in their grave, what would they be saying? If they had one good entrepreneurial dinosaur, they would be roaming on the moon, Mars, and beyond, right? Didn't happen for them. Let's not be that dinosaur now, right? Now, interesting thing is, as we were going out and trying to find a way to live on the moon, everyone kept saying, how is that even possible? How are you going to grow the food on the moon, right? And that is, to me, is a wrong question to ask. Because when you ask the question, how are we going to grow the food on the moon, the only answer would be how to grow the food on the moon. But what if you ask a slightly different question? Why do we eat food? And just by simply asking that question, why we eat food, suddenly the solutions are many. We eat food because we need energy, and we eat food because we need nutrition. What if we can get energy from photosynthesis like plants do? What if we can get energy from radiation like the bacteria do? What if the nutrition that we need is hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen? Now imagine, if we have water on the moon, we already got the hydrogen and oxygen, and living on the moon is about finding the nitrogen on the moon or taking enough nitrogen to the moon. And suddenly the problem that looked impossible suddenly looks possible. The same thing, as I was finishing up the project of going to the moon, it occurred to me that having done the moon shot, what do you do for an encore? You do another moon shot, and this time I thought I was going to do a symbolic moon shot. And the symbolic moon shot was, what are the two biggest problems, if I could handle, that could fundamentally change the lives of 1 billion people if we are successful? And I thought the only two problems that really mattered in the world were education and healthcare. And I thought, for a couple of months, we looked at both the problems, and it turns out the problems are very, very similar. In a sense that if you look at the education system, everyone believes it's broken, everyone thinks it's not working, and it turns out neither the education system is broken, nor the healthcare system is broken. They're doing exactly what they were designed to do. Our education system was designed to teach us skills, and in the olden days, you can take those skills, use them for the rest of your life, and you had a productive citizen of the society. Same thing happened now in the world that we live today, with the world of exponential technologies. It doesn't matter what skill you learn. By the time you graduate, the skill becomes obsolete. So that means we have to rethink our education system, learning to learn, learning to solve problems, and most problems tend to be multidisciplinary. That means you can't have an education system that teaches you one single discipline, because problems tend to be multidisciplinary. Same thing happened in the healthcare system. It was designed at the times when we were dying from infectious diseases. And one would argue that we have done an amazingly brilliant job of getting rid of infectious diseases, the communicable diseases. The world is now suffering from chronic diseases, the epidemic of chronic diseases. And it turns out we name these chronic diseases. And let me tell you one thing. The chronic diseases, the root cause of chronic diseases is chronic inflammation. Chronic inflammation causes chronic diseases. You can name them anything you want. We name them Parkinson's. We name them Alzheimer's. We name them depression, anxiety. We name them diabetes, obesity, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, different types of cancer, autoimmune diseases. All of the diseases which are underlying is inflammatory diseases. Now, I am not a scientist, and I'm not a doctor. So what do you do when you're not expert at something? You are the best person to solve that problem. So the minute you know, seriously, if you don't know about some area, you are absolutely the most dangerous person that industry has ever seen, because you don't know what is not possible. So I started this thing. First thing was I read all the scientific journals. So I probably read at least 5,000 articles on the research on why do people have Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, depression. And every article kept talking about this gut microbiome. And I keep thinking, wow, that gut microbiome thing is really interesting. And as soon as I realized that all these diseases have something to do with gut microbiome, I panicked. And I'm thinking, oh my God, you are a moron. If this thing is so obvious to everyone that gut microbiome is the key, and there are tens of companies analyzing gut microbiome, why this problem has not been solved? There has to be something I'm missing. And then it occurred to me that what are the questions people are asking? And it turns out that every single company, every single researcher was asking the wrong question. They were all trying to find out what organisms are inside the gut. And I thought that's absolutely the wrong question. The only question we should be asking is not who is there, but what they are actually producing. What are they doing is important, not who is there. Because in my naive mind, these organisms are like human beings. There could be 10 different people with 10 different names doing exactly the same thing, and the same person, depending on the environment, could be completely doing different things. So for example, me at work is an entrepreneur. Me at home is a dishwasher, right? Now, depending on what environment I am in, I could be a dishwasher, I could be an entrepreneur. And that's really what organisms do. Literally, depending on which gut they are in, they completely produce a completely different thing. Anyway, once I realized that is the problem that needs to be solved, now here is my learning, that every one of us thought the DNA or the human genes, once we understand the DNA, we would understand the software of what makes us human. And I can tell you that DNA is the one thing that has set us back 10 years. And here's why. If you look at the chronic diseases, the day before you get the depression and the day after you have depression, your DNA has not changed. In fact, your DNA stays the same whether you get fat, whether you have diabetes, whether you have depression, whether your autoimmune diseases flare up or not. In any one of these chronic diseases, your DNA never changes. What really changes is the expression of the genes. Your genes don't change, your gene expression is constantly changing. And we realized, what if we can measure the gene expression? And that was a fundamental breakthrough. It turns out everyone told me that gene expression cannot be measured. It can never be sequenced. It can never be understood because it's very unstable. It turns out that me being not an expert, I never take no for an answer. And I just kept going around the different research labs until I found at Los Alamos National Lab, they were working on a biodefense project, figuring out how to sequence the RNA, which is the gene expression. I managed to get the exclusive license to the technology, and we started a company with a fundamental goal of making disease optional. And that company became Viome. And I'm going to tell you that in the next 5 minutes, that how quickly we are starting to learn how human body works. And many of the things that completely surprised me. So just to give you a quick update, now that we have hundreds of thousands of people who have actually taken the test, we actually now have the signature for depression. We can tell you just by looking at your gut. In other words, by looking at your stool, poop, whatever you want to call it, that thing. We can tell you if you have depression. We can tell you if you have diabetes. We can tell you if you have obesity. And we can tell you if you have IBS. In fact, just last week alone, we did the saliva microbiome because our microbiome also resides in our mouth. And just by looking at the saliva microbiome, we were able to predict the oral cancer with 89% accuracy. Right? We can, in fact, just by looking at your gut, can tell you that every single food that you eat, what is going to be the glycemic response of that food before you eat it. And the same bread, two people can eat will have a completely different response. And we knew that intuitively, that some people can eat all the bread they want, they never get fat, and some people can smell the bread and they get fat, right? We all know them, right? and that actually now we can scientifically show what actually happens. Now, you know, we get every single day, what warms my heart is a tremendous amount of input we get from our customer. They tell us their acne is gone. They lost weight. They're no longer on the diabetes drug. They cut down the biologics because they have autoimmune drugs or autoimmune diseases, Hashimoto. They have no longer anxiety, depression, and including cancer. Now, honestly, anecdotes make a great story, but they make a really poor science, right? So what we did is we say, we're not going to take the anecdote and start to sell the product based on the anecdotes. So we are now doing a double-blind clinical trial for reversal of autism in 300 children in Pennsylvania. We are doing a trial for insomnia and obesity with Mayo Clinic. So we're going to Mayo Clinic and showing exactly what causes insomnia and obesity. We are working with Kaiser Permanente on type 2 diabetes. We are working with the United Healthcare Group on IBD and type 2 diabetes. We are working with oral cancer with Queensland University. We are working with pancreatic cancer with New York University. We are working with UCLA on IBS, and on and on and on. Our goal is simply to understand what causes people to have diseases and how food can be a medicine. and how food and personalized supplement can actually reverse these diseases. Now, we think we actually invented something because we're really, really bright people. We wanted to pat ourselves on the back until you realize there's nothing new here. Right? This is 2,500 years ago. You know what Hippocrates says? All diseases begin in the gut. One man's food is another man's poison. Let food be thy medicine. Let thy medicine be the food. And I'm thinking, 2,500 years and billions of dollars later, this is what you came up with? Right? And that's really what it is, right? We really are going back to the future of understanding, except that now we have the real science. So when you actually, how many of you actually are familiar with Viome who have taken the test here? I know several of you have. 1, 2, 3, half a dozen people. Amazing things are, when you actually do the test, you get an app, and it tells you everything that's happening inside the body. So it tells me how is your oxalate metabolism, your salt stress, your flagella, your TMA production. But most interestingly, all those are scientific stuff. What really matters, it tells you, don't eat these food and why. So for example, for me, it says don't eat apple. Supposed to be healthy food, right? Because I have an apple colorectal leaf virus. It says don't eat spinach because my gut microbiome is not producing enzyme to digest oxalic acid, and that's going to end up causing either inflammation or kidney stone. It says don't eat broccoli, Brussels sprout, or cabbage. All supposed to be healthy food, right? It turns out that my gut microbiome is producing too much sulfide, and these foods are very high in sulfate, and that's causing tons of inflammation in my gut. It turns out we see the people who are on this paleo diet eating a lot of protein, and it turns out when the protein is not digested, it goes to the gut, and protein fermenters, the microbes we call protein fermenters, they release ammonia and sulfide, causing you inflammation, so you think you're healthy. The keto diet, we have seen so many people, the technical term is completely screwing up their gut on keto diet. Right? Because they end up not getting the nutrients your body needs, and they end up being anxiety, thyroid, and all types of diseases. The people go on these fasting diets. It turns out that when you don't eat, those microbes in your gut eat what they have, which is called gut lining. Right? So you think you may be actually somehow not feeding them and somehow starving them. They don't get starved. Anytime you fight evolution, evolution won, humans zero. Right? So always remember, evolution always wins, right? You don't feed them, they feed themselves. But all I'm trying to tell you is that this is the time, ours is the generation that will actually solve this problem. This is simply a big data problem. And we are so close to reaching our goal, we need 2 million of us to come together. And when humanity can come together to solve this problem, not only we can stay healthy, we can make this world disease-free, as Susan will tell you, that not only the disease-free life for our children and grandchildren, we can actually make the illness completely optional. I lost my dad about 10 months ago with a pancreatic cancer. And it was so obvious that there is so much research that says pancreatic cancer is actually caused by the gut microbiome going through the bile duct, going into pancreas, shutting down the immune system, letting cancer grow. And I was holding the research and telling the doctor, all I want you to do is inject the antimicrobial, antifungal into his pancreas. Doctor says, that's not what we do. That's not our protocol. And he died. And I told my dad that I can't help him, but I'm going to work as hard as possible to make sure that no one else suffers from chronic diseases. Thank you. I want you to know that I went to the United States. I came from India. We didn't have food to eat. We didn't have a place to stay. I went to the United States with $5 in my pocket and didn't speak the language. And God has been amazingly kind to us. Any which way you look at it, God has given us more than we could have ever asked for. Now, at this stage in my life, I'm simply trying to pay back my debt to the society. And I work 18-hour days, 7 days a week, because I believe we can solve this problem. If not us, then who? And I believe that if we come together, we can eliminate not only the chronic diseases, we can get rid of the pharmaceutical companies that actually make money by keeping us sick, right? Pharmaceutical companies have become the parasite on humanity. When they look at someone with chronic disease, they think it's a lifetime subscriber. Humanity will come together to kill that parasite. So let's all come together and kill that parasite and believe in wellness. Thank you.